Okay, today's class is going to be about deliberate practice. Who here has ever heard of deliberate practice before? Anyone? So I guess it's going to be like a new topic for everybody. So deliberate practice is a field of study in psychology and more specifically in terms of expertise. So deliberate practice is the study of how we can answer this question or how we can explain how the best performers in any field become the best performers. So how do people become experts at something? So why do some athletes become the best? How do some musicians become the best? How do some painters become the best? How do people move from being an average person on a field to become one of the best in that area? So basically, it studies how people can become great in something. Here we have this person here is responsible for most of the research in the field. So Professor Erickson, he wrote a few books on the topic. He made a lot of research in this area. He published many papers on deliberate practice. And if you are interested in diving deeper into this, if you're actually serious about becoming very good at something, maybe you're very competitive in some area, whatever it is, I would definitely recommend you to read. This class is going to cover like the broad topics, but if you want to become the best on like, it can be a competition, it can be like an exam, it can be how to become like the best performer in a certain exam, like getting above 99 percentile. It can be in a certain sport, it can be on a certain type of art, anything like that. I would totally recommend you to read about deliberate practice. This is one of his books, Peak, Secrets from the New Science of Expertise. And his research is basically great. And here is just a quick summary of what deliberate practice is. Basically, these are the methods that the best of any field use to practice and improve their performance. Basically, that's deliberate practice. And the cool thing about this is that Professor Erickson studied multiple fields and compared the methods they implemented. So compared the methods used by the top performers in multiple fields, and there were really many similarities, even though the fields were extremely different. So the idea is that by implementing those methods, you can also become great at something, and you can improve your performance in something. Okay, so before we start, if you guys have any questions, just raise your hands at any time. But before we start, I would like to cover these 3 limiting mindsets, because I think they are like they were not coined by myself. I got them from books I've read and on the topic. And here are 3 key mindsets that block deliberate practice for people. And the first one that I would like to mention is performance is cannot be improved. So it's basically caused by a gift. This type of mentality of like, oh, so and so got this because, well, they're a genius or they're just like gifted and things like that. If you have this type of mentality and you think that you're bad at something, then you're inevitably not going to dedicate as much, because you're going to think that you don't have that gift, so you're never going to achieve that type of performance. So this is the first limiting mindset that you need to get rid of before you even start to think of like actually improving in the area. You need to get rid of that so that that improvement becomes possible. So that's something interesting. Like many people, for instance, when I broke my first record, many people say, "Oh, you're probably like just a genius. Probably have like a good memory or something." My memory is quite trash, but it's really through practice, and it's just very easy to be like, "Oh, it's just a gift." Or, for instance, before I broke my first record, when I was learning about memory techniques, I could have like looked at it, and I initially thought that memorization was something that was just a gift, And then people who would break those records, they were just people who were very good in, like they were born with better memories. So when I heard of the methods and I thought of the possibility of improving my memory to that level, I was like, that must be a lie. That cannot be true. So that's what motivated me to look further. But you really need to get rid of this mindset. The second mindset is repetition leads to perfection. So that it's the idea like repetition makes it perfect, and this is not true. If you repeat the same thing over and over again, you're not gonna necessarily get better at it. So you have many people who practice something for decades and they're still trashing it. So you're gonna have maybe a relative of yours, maybe a friend of yours who always plays a certain type of sport, always plays, let's say, whatever it is, plays some type of game, and it's been for years, but they still suck at it, or they still played equally well or equally bad, and they don't improve because they don't have technique. They are not actually looking for their mistakes and trying to overcome them. They're just playing over and over again for fun, and that's fine. But you can't think that just repeating the same thing over and over again is going to lead to improvement. And the things that are necessary are the things that we're going to cover in this class. The third limiting mindset is the idea of trying hard. If you're not improving, you just need to try harder, and that's not true. For instance, if you're like training for an exam and you're like, well, I'm not getting the scores I want, so I'm just going to spend more hours to study, and then I'm going to have better grades. That's not necessarily true. For instance, if you study for 12 hours a day, that's not good. That's not going to work. I did it once, of this idea of like trying to study for like 12 hours daily every day for a few months. It did not work very well. I obviously burned out. But the point is that it was a useful experience to at least have that in my life. Of like, okay, I tried this once in my life, and I learned a lot, yes. However, even though I learned a lot, 12 hours a day, I learned what I learned in 12 hours a day for like 2 months, nonstop, and no break, like no rest day whatsoever, like 7 days a week, was not as much as I could have learned if I had studied for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. Because if I studied 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2 months, I would have managed to rest in the meantime, and I wouldn't be so tired, and I could have more focus, and then I would have learned more. So there's this idea that the more effort you spend, the less you earn out of it. And that's something we're going to cover later on. Sean?
How can you apply like that 12 hours mindset to like maybe like a job or like forced to work like 12 hours a day, basically?
Okay. So what I'm saying here is that it's just the idea that trying harder is not necessarily going to lead to improvement. It's just that. This is just an example.
But like maybe if you feel like you're working on a job and like you're not maybe being productive the full 12 hours, but like can it be better to just do like 4 hours of focus work a day, but like you can't really do
Okay.
that?
Okay. We can.
Maybe it's not relevant.
I'm going to cover more things later on, and then maybe it's going to become more obvious. Because the idea here that I'm trying to show is that this is just an example of, it's not that spending less hours is better always. I'm not saying that the fewer hours you spend, the better it's going to be. I'm just saying that effort on its own is not the key factor. It's not effort for its own sake. What actually matters is focus. So you should spend as long as you can, as you still maintain focus. And so far as you can still maintain focus. That's my point. If you want like something that's like high, like an activity that is cognitively demanding. That's what I mean. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense. But I'm wondering, like, so okay, you can focus better for like, you would focus better if you only like work like 6 hours in a day per se.
Yeah.
But like in a like you're in an environment where you kind of like you can't.
You have to have a lot of hours.
Like you can't just leave after. Like,
Yeah, that's a very good question. So what do I do if I need to have a ton of hours? Like I gotta work for like 12 hours a day, and no matter what, I cannot decrease the number of hours. The thing is that in any type of activity, in any type of job you can have, you're gonna have activities that are highly cognitively demanding and activities that are pure chores and are not are mindless chores, like responding to emails, filling forms, doing things like that that don't actually do not require focus, do not require high focus. The idea is that if you can have my point is just that for those hours that you have focus, you should really actually focus on that. It's going to become more clear later on, though. Sure.
So how about, let's say for example, like you have to work 12 hours, like it's mandatory.
Mhm.
I think, I don't know, like if it's a technique that we could use, is like even taking small breaks, even if it's 5 minutes.
We're going to cover that, yeah,
So it
about
helps you
breaks.
then, to recenter yourself. You know, just find something that rejuvenates you, whether
Mhm.
be it drinking water, whether be listening to a song that pumps you. Remember when we were playing friends, you know, sometimes you need something that pumps you, right? You know, you get back on the grind, you know, sometimes you have a very tough conversation and, you know, maybe you take it hard on yourself for like 2 minutes, then the next 5 minutes you get back on the grind. So I think like, yeah, just finding how you feed your soul and your mind. Like, because when you feed your soul, you feed your mind, um, you get in the right state of mind, you can focus more. Right?
Okay.
So that's legal.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah, we'll cover about breaks later on. It, yeah, yeah. If it doesn't become clear at the end, ask me again, okay, Sean? If it doesn't become clear later on, just ask me again, and I can cover it in more detail. This is really just like very basic introduction. I didn't actually start the actual deliberate practice. Here are like the 5 principles of deliberate practice, and the idea is that deliberate practice is usually applied to a specific field, a specific skill that you want to develop. So let's say you have a clear skill in your head that you want to develop. You want to be good at X. For instance, I want to be good at memorizing numbers, or I want to be good at playing soccer. I want to be good at solving the Rubik's Cube. I want to be very fast at it. I want to be good at drawing. I want to be good at playing the flute, whatever it is. So it's something specific they want to develop. I want to be good at this particular exam and get a high score in like maybe MCAT or LSAT or whatever it is. Here we have the 5 principles, which are the skilled teacher, which is basically someone who has a ton of knowledge on the field and can help you. And very often you're not going to have that in sports. That's usually called the coach, but usually for many fields you don't have a person to be guiding you directly. So in that situation you can have like books, you can have the internet and things like that. For instance, in the case of memorization, I had like, if you want to apply deliberate practice to that, you don't have someone like to actually help you directly usually. So you just read books and practice on your own and ask people online and things like that. For focused practice, it's a focused practice. Focused practice is the idea that deliberate practice, it's basically in the name, it's practice that's deliberate. And the idea is that during deliberate practice, when you're doing deliberate practice, you are focused. If you're not focused, it's not deliberate practice. And the idea of deliberate practice is that if you are doing deliberate practice, which is supposedly the most effective way of developing a skill, that's another way. You can say that deliberate practice is this field of study, but the idea is that deliberate practice is also this way of practicing a skill that leads to expertise, basically. Um, for you to do deliberate practice, which is what we are aiming at, there needs to be focus. We have well-defined and difficult goals, which is the idea that for you to have deliberate practice, you need to set clear goals for yourself when you're doing like when you're training, and they need to be difficult. If they're too easy, you're going to just you're not going to actually develop if it's too easy, obviously. If it's hard and you feel overwhelmed and just there's just anxiety, there's no improvement either. So It needs to be in a point that it's challenging. You need to feel like you're leaving your comfort zone, but it can't be too hard to the point that you actually cannot even process things. So it should be challenging. That's like the perfect word for it. Usually when you define goals, it's very common for people to write things like, I want to do this well. This is not a good goal to have. You need to have like something that's clear and well defined. If you're trying to become good at something, you should have these micro goals that you set that are actually very well defined. For instance, if I want to memorize numbers, well, that means, well, I want to memorize numbers faster. But what does it mean? Well, maybe I want to memorize, let's say, 200 digits under 5 minutes. That's one goal that is very clear and well defined and has a specific metric. So something that's measurable. That's what I mean by well defined. It's measurable. Now, feedback, this pretty much the most important aspect of deliberate practice. It's the idea that you need to understand what you did right and what you did wrong. Because if you just practice, and that's the reason why practicing over and over again doesn't lead to perfection. Because if you just practice over and over again, there's no feedback. You don't analyze what you did right, what you did wrong, how you can improve, what mistakes you made. If you don't take lessons out of that, there's going to be no improvement. You're going to do the same thing over and over again. You're going to keep repeating the mistakes, and then there's literally no improvement. And it's from the feedback that improvement becomes possible. So that's why I'm saying that feedback is literally the most important aspect of this. Because you need the feedback to set the future goals as well. Because you get, it's from the feedback, you notice what you're making mistakes at. In your next session, in your next practice, in your next drill, you're going to set the goals in order to focus on the feedback from the past sessions. So you have, let's say you're practicing for an exam and you see that you make a lot of mistakes with mental math, specifically related to, let's say, multiplication between like two-digit numbers and one-digit number. Like you make mistakes, like you try to multiply, let's say, 43 by 8 or whatever, and make mistakes in that. So that's a specific problem that you're having. And let's say you don't have access to a calculator in that exam. That is a specific thing that you can set as a goal for you to practice. So I want to solve, let's say, I want to be, let's say, 95% accurate. Let's say you have like an accuracy of like currently of 70%. Then you said, I want to be 80% accurate. And then you practice for the whole day setting that as a goal. And then you keep improving that goal, given a certain time limit. Okay. And the last one, drills to improve sub-skills and address weaker points found during practice. This obviously depends on the feedback. The idea is that of deliberate practice is that we have these what are called drills. So you're practicing to improve something, to improve a certain skill, and you're not just going to be doing the whole thing over and over again. For instance, if you want to be good at playing the, let's choose something else. If you want to be good at drawing, you're not going to be drawing a whole drawing every single time. That's your end goal, to do a good drawing, a complete full drawing that looks good. That's your end goal. However, you can't just every day, I'm going to keep practicing doing a whole drawing every single day. You need to focus on specific problems that you're having, specific mistakes you're making. So let's say you have trouble with human anatomy and you have trouble drawing, let's say, hands. Hands are a very common problem. So you're going to focus specifically on hands. And in that case, you don't necessarily need to focus on the whole thing, but it can be like, I want to make a good sketch of a hand. And by that, let's say you want to have the right proportions of, let's say the right, how can I say, you want to have the right proportions of the fingers, whatever it is. And you have like a specific way of measuring that or defining what you're looking for on that, depending on the mistakes you were making previously. Does everyone understand what I mean? Like in these, is it okay? Can I move on? So these 5 principles, they are really what guide any type of practice, that any deliberate practice. And if you are practicing to improve your skill at anything, if you can ask yourself how you're implementing these 5, it's going to help you improve a lot. Now here, the 4 types of drills is the idea that across many fields, we have similar drills repeating over and over again. So drills are important. We need drills. Drills are ways for us to practice and focus on specific sub-skills. So we do a test, we try to do something in that area, and we get the feedback. We notice, well, I am bad at this, I'm good at that. I need to focus on the things that I'm having trouble with. And for me to focus on them, I'm going to do these drills so that I can improve. And here are 4 types of drills that are very common in many different areas. The first one is practice sub-skills trying to get better. That happens in every single field. You need to focus on what you're having most trouble with. So here's one example in case of like you're trying to improve like Rubik's Cube, your speed at solving the Rubik's Cube. So you're gonna focus on a specific set of movements because there are a ton of movements you gotta make to solve the Rubik's Cube. So you could focus on specific sets instead of focusing on solving the whole thing and decreasing your time entirely. You focus on specific parts so that supposedly you're gonna decrease your time overall. Study an expert's performance and predict the next move. That's very common in many different fields. This is just an example of like chess is a very common example of this. If you want to be good at chess, many people would do what? They were going to study other games. They're going to study how other people performed, how other people made their choices when playing chess, so that they can learn from other experts. Try to replicate an expert production. That's very common in art and visual arts. That is also very helpful in case of like writing. If you want to become good at writing, that can also work in the sense of like you can, if you like someone's style of writing, and you are like, I really want to learn how this person writes. I really like their style. You can also do that of like trying to rewrite their text in your own words, but following that style, and try to improve your writing based on the other person's writing, and you try to replicate. And notice, you're not replicating looking at it. You look at it, study it, and then you go on your own and try to replicate on your own. Obviously, if you're just like looking, copying every single detail, that doesn't work. But the idea is that you're trying to replicate on your own. I should add that to the slide, actually. So you're basically trying to replicate that on your own without actually looking at it at the same time. This is also good for language learning. In the case, there is a method called the shadowing method. And the idea is that you try to replicate someone else's pronunciation of words. So imagine you're learning, let's say, French, and you want to learn how to speak better, how to improve your pronunciation. One way you can do this is to find someone whom you believe to have a very good accent. So you look at them and like, oh my God, I really like this person's accent. Maybe it's someone from a movie, maybe it's someone from a show. And then what you do is basically that you listen to a certain speech. Maybe they spoke for like, you get a recording of their audio for like, let's say 1 minute or something. You listen to it, and then later you try to say it on your own, and you try to like mimic the way they pronunciate things, each phoneme, each sound, and then you listen to it again and try to improve that. So if you're interested in that, you should Google like shadowing method, language pronunciation. That's really a good method. Record yourself. That's very good for like any skill that you actually want to get. Very good for things that involve your body, or things that, in this case, sound also works very well. This can work very well for things like sports. This can work for things like, let's say, if you're playing like, it can be good for pretty much skateboarding. It can be good for like improving your driving skills. It can be good for anything like that, because then you can get a feedback that's directly, it's very real. You can't like fake that. Any questions about these? These are just ideas, overall ideas, and kind of templates that can be used to like guide drills. Any questions? Or I can move on. Okay. So after you have the drill, you still need to gather feedback, right? You still need to gather the feedback. And here are like the 3 golden questions of deliberate practice. We want to have practice that's as effective as possible. And for this, there are these 3 questions that are extremely important to be asked after a drill, after a practice. And these are, what did you do? So that you can recall what you were doing. What were your mistakes? And how you can do better next time. These 3 questions are what guide you in the sense of you become able to understand what the things you should focus on are. So what did you do is going to basically, it's just for you to recollect what happened in that moment when you were practicing, when you were playing some instrument, when you were playing some sport, when you were drawing, how did you do the drawing, all those things. And by answering those questions, and the last one is clearly the most important since that's the lesson, but it comes from the previous ones. And after asking those 3 questions, you get the feedback. And here is the idea of a performance log. And if you're practicing, let's say for an exam, and you want to be very good at the MCAT, for instance, you really need, like throughout your practice, you're going to learn a ton of things. You're going to learn that you're very bad at something, you're good at something else, then you focus on the things that are bad to improve. And while you practice, you're going to learn some lessons. You're going to notice, well, when a question like this come up, it's usually because I should apply that theorem. It's usually because I should apply that concept. But if you keep practicing, in the case of an exam, for instance, you're going to practice for really many months, maybe years. If you don't have a way to store that, you're going to forget that. You are going to eventually forget the lessons you found. So that's why a performance log becomes so important, because that's going to store all your lessons, all your insights. They're so precious in deliberate practice. And it's important that you can have your performance so you can watch your improvement, because if your grades are going down, if your performance is going down, you're doing something wrong. And you should change your practice. You should change your strategy. You should also know your mistakes so you can study them later on as well. And you should have your lessons and insights, and they should be stored in a way that's easy to access. So for instance, right before you take, in the case of the MCAT, right before you take a sample test, you're going to look for your insights. You're going to go open your Excel spreadsheet with your performance log or your Word file or a notebook you have. And you're going to go to the lessons part, and you're going to check all your lessons you made so that you can check them before you take the test, before you take either a sample test or the actual test on the actual test day. So the performance log is really, really good, really crucial. Any questions about this? About the 3 golden questions in the performance log? The performance log can work literally, you can maintain like you're basically putting your answers to these 3 questions. That's the performance log. You're basically answering these 3 questions, which is the same as putting these 3 things. Your performance, your mistakes, your lessons and insights. Now, for any field that you're trying to improve, any field that you're trying to be good at, you're going to have plateaus. In the beginning, you're going to improve a lot by just trying, by just practicing. And after a while, you're going to plateau. And that happens in every single field. If you didn't reach a plateau, you didn't reach a plateau yet. But there is going to be a plateau at some point. And the difference between an averagely good performer and an expert performer is usually that the expert performance overcame the plateau. But they did pass through the damn plateau. It happens to everyone in every single field. And here are like 3 key strategies to overcome plateaus. And I think this is really crucial in every single area. The first idea is to increase the difficulty consistently. So let's say you want to increase your typing speed. You want to be very fast at typing. If you try to take a typing course and you try to improve like a typing speed course, initially, just by trying to type faster, you will type faster. You will eventually, day after day, you're going to type faster and faster and faster and faster. After a while, you're going to notice that your speed is not going to increase. And then you'll reach a plateau. In order for you to improve your typing speed, what people do is that they usually use this. I forgot the name of the thing. Is it a metronome? I think in the English word, like you have the beep sound every certain set number of certain amount of time. Is it a metronome? So the idea is that, thank you. The idea is that you use a metronome that's going to beep at a specific amount, a specific duration of time, so that you're gonna type at the same rate that you hear the sound. And what this means is that you're gonna force yourself to increase your speed. So if you're typing at a rate X, you increase the speed by like 20% and try to follow that, the speed of the metronome. And now you're trying to keep up with that sound. And now you're gonna push yourself forward. And here are other two examples of this rule. So for instance, in the case of bodybuilding, like the 2x2 rule, bodybuilding has the same plateau, people will plateau. And one rule for increasing the difficulty is this idea that if you do like 2 more repetitions in the last set for 2 consecutive sessions, so let's say you go to the gym, like you do 1 round per week, that would mean like if in 2 weeks, imagine you exercise every muscle of your body once a week. So if you do 2 extra repetitions in the last set, in 2 consecutive weeks, you can increase the weight for the exercise from 2.5 to 10%. That's one example of rule. On the 90% rule, the idea you get 90% accuracy, you increase the difficulty by 20%. Clearly, this rule could not be applied to bodybuilding. That would be, it doesn't work. But each field is going to have a different set of rules. These are just 2 examples that you could follow. This could be helpful, for instance, for practicing for an exam. So you're practicing like a set of questions. You have an accuracy of 90%. Now you can increase, let's say, the speed you do those questions by 20%. So now you're going to try to do a set of questions from that exam 20% faster. So the point here is that you don't need to do 100% well for you to increase the difficulty. And that's a very key insight of deliberate practice, because usually what makes people not increase is that they don't feel good enough to increase the difficulty, and they're not perfect, and then they don't increase the difficulty, but then they don't improve, and then it becomes a cycle, and then they just stagnate. So you don't need to be 100% before you can increase the difficulty. The second idea is to challenge yourself in a different way. So the idea is that if you keep practicing the same way, you are going to stagnate. You need to change the way you're practicing so that you can improve in a different way, and you can get a different perspective of things. And you can find out other problems, other mistakes you're making, and then you can improve better. This can include doing things like, in the case of playing an instrument, you can play the instrument in public instead of alone. You can do things like, in the case of studying, you can change the place you study. It can be very different things. You can change the nature of your drills, the way you're actually doing your drills. So let's say you're practicing for a test, but right now you're just doing the problems from a certain book. You're just doing the exercises from the book. You can look for a database instead. You can do different things. But basically, after you reach that plateau, that's the moment that you're actually gonna think of doing these 2. This is usually gonna come after this one. Like the first plateau is usually like just this. You just solve this one. Now take a break. That's the last way to overcome a plateau, and you don't want to use it. This is literally when everything else failed. You're already quite good. You're like above 90, above 95% percentile, or 99 percentile even. And you can't improve at all, but you need to improve. Let's say you're really competitive in this field and you need to improve, but you can't. You tried absolutely everything and everything fails. Here, taking a break is like your last option. Sometimes you try everything and you won't improve. This idea is that, I do not know if you guys have experienced this before, but you know when you're taking an exam and you can't find a solution to a question, then you skip the question, and when you come back, there is the solution. That's just a very common experience, I think. This is kind of something similar. You basically, you practice every day, and you can't improve. Then you take a break of like 3 days, 4 days, and when you come back, your performance is better. Why? Don't ask me. I don't know. But like that does happen consistently in different fields and at different times, and it is really a weird phenomenon, but it does help. But again, this is only if you're like very serious, if you've been practicing a lot. This can help in case you burnt out as well. But yeah. Any questions? These are basically like the main ways to overcome a plateau. That happens in like pretty much any field whatsoever. So I'm gonna move on to the 1-5-25 rule and burnouts. And here are the idea of breaks that Sean was talking about. And here, as I said before, the most important thing is not as much of effort, but focus and technique. You can't put, if you put a lot of effort, it's not necessarily going to be better if there is no focus. If you put a lot of effort, if you're very tired and you're just like making your life miserable, but there's no focus, you're not going to improve. So if you're studying and you're sluggish and you're not paying attention, you're not going to improve. If you're thinking, oh, I'm going to study for 6 hours today, continuously, no break, and then you're thinking, oh, I'm going to learn so much, but you're so damn tired, you're not learning. So you're just wasting your damn time. You would be better by just studying 30 minutes and just playing on your using your phone the whole day, because 6 hours and just zero focus, there is no point. So if you're gonna do it like with full intent and do it focusedly, like no multitasking. And here is the idea that because deliberate practice is highly demanding, you will get tired. It will be tiresome. And this rule is to avoid that you burn out or that you lose too much focus to the point that it's not worth it. And this is based on research, and this is just a good rule of thumb to have. So the idea is that when you're doing deliberate practice, so you're doing that activity that's highly focused, a drill or practice session or whatever it is, you can't be very, very focused for longer than 1 hour. If it goes too long, above 1 hour, you're probably going to get distracted. You are going to get tired. And that's like as a rule of thumb. Rarely you can hold the concentration for longer than that, but you can't take that as a rule of thumb at all. And it's better for you to cap that at 1 hour. And then you take a break. And then 5 hours in a single day as a limit for that deliberate practice. And at most 25 hours per week. So if you were going to do the maximum of all of them, like the maximum per amount, the maximum per session, the maximum per day, and the maximum per week, you would study it for like 5 days. You could do like from Monday to Friday, and then you would rest for 2 days, and you would practice like 5 sessions of 1 hour and so on. And here we have also a rule of thumb for choosing the duration of your breaks. This works very well for study sessions. So you get from like 1/3 to 1/4 of the session you spent studying, depending on how tired you were. So it will, if you study for like 1 hour, it would take a break of like 20 minutes, or or it could take a break of 15 minutes if you feel like you're rested enough. Pomodoro is usually based on this idea, a similar idea as well. It's just a different ratio. And Pomodoro is very good if you, does everyone here know Pomodoro? So Pomodoro is the idea that you study for 25 minutes, take 5 minutes break, and keep repeating that. So 25 minutes of study, 5 minutes of break, and you repeat. And Pomodoro is very nice if you're having a lot of trouble with motivation. But it's not necessarily the most effective if you already have the motivation. So if you already have the motivation and you don't have trouble with that right now, you probably can hold concentration for longer than 25 minutes if it's an activity they are engaged in. So here are like a good guideline to have. notice that even if you're very engrossed in the material, you're gonna feel the tendency to be like, oh, I can't take a break right now. And there's the feeling that if you take a break at that moment, you're gonna lose it. And that's not true. The point is that you can leave things for your subconscious mind to just deal with it. And then you come back and there's an improved performance. Just like I mentioned in the previous slide, you take a break, when you come back, sometimes there is an increase in performance, and partially this is due to like just your subconscious mind doing the job, but also it's due, in my belief, it's due to some level of forgetfulness, in the sense that sometimes we get stuck on a certain problem and we cannot see anything else. And just by looking at something else, just by taking a break, we can forget a little bit of that closed mindedness, and when we come back, we can see things in a different angle. For instance, if you're like drawing, very often you're gonna be drawing something, and you're gonna draw for like 1 hour, and then you cannot see that the thing is really tilted. You can't, like, you draw a circle and looks perfect, but that's because you're staring at it for so long. When you take a break and you come back, you're like, this is so ugly. You're like, this is totally like, this is like an ellipse. Like, this is totally wrong. This is not a circle. And this happens like many different fields. So you need to take a break so you can lose that closed mindedness, so that your eyes can get better in that sense. But eyes in like a broader sense of things, not just for drawing, but really for any field. And notice what I was talking before, the question on what about like jobs or things like that. The idea is that imagine you have this reservoir of focus, and you have like maximum 5 hours per day. This is even higher than what the research shows. Okay, I'm putting 5 hours as like a cap that's above what is usually found. Usually it's like 4 hours, and the research usually shows that it ranges from, like, per week, deliberate practice ranges from 20 hours to 24. So this is like above the maximum. So this is really like a strict maximum to have. Usually like a good, per session, 1 hour may work, but it's usually like from 50 minutes to 1 hour. So this is like just a handy set of numbers to have. But this is really like a strict maximum for like fully focused activity. But for the case of a job, you have a ton of mindless work. You have a lot of chores that do not require focus. And the idea is that you have these 5 hours of extreme focus available to you every single day. And if you can put all the highly focused activities in that time frame, let's say all the research you have to do that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of that's very cognitively demanding, if you can put all of that in those hours, you can maximize your productivity. And then the mindless chores, you just do all of them together because they don't require much thinking, so you can do multitasking. Because deliberate practice cannot have multitasking. Okay. Let me think if I have anything else on this. I think, yeah. So, any questions about this? Sure.
You say it can't have any multitasking. Does that mean like you shouldn't like study and listen to music?
Does multitasking mean I can't listen to music while I study? That's a very good question. The idea is that if the music takes your attention from what you're studying, then it can be bad, right? So, for instance, in my case, if I am studying and the music does not have any lyrics, that's not going to call my attention. It's just white noise. So you can have white noise to study. But let's say before I learned English, if I was listening to a music that had lyrics but was in English, I didn't understand English, so it doesn't matter. Even today, there's like a ton of music like I don't understand at all. I'm like, what is this guy saying? And it's not gonna matter for me. But if you can understand it, it's gonna call your attention. It's gonna grab your attention. But if it's just white noise, and white noise is a very good thing for you to use if you are struggling with, if you study in an environment that there's a lot of noise, if you have roommates who are noisy, things like that, white noise can be very helpful. What else? But there is another benefit of listening to music while you study. That's, although music can call your attention away from the studies, many people are going to struggle with motivation. And the thing is that here we are talking about how you can have the best practice ever. Like this is like the gold standard of practice. However, many people are gonna be struggling to practice at all. And very often it's better to practice badly or not optimally rather than not practice at all. So it's better to study not with the 100% focus than not to study at all. And the thing with music is that the time you spend studying, even if you're listening to music, you're still studying, although you're not fully percent focused. So I had a friend many years ago, and he had a lot of trouble with studying. He was having very low grade and stuff. And the only thing that helped him to get the motivation to study was if he was listening to music. So it was better for him to study at all, listen to music, than not study. So that's the idea. Optimally, no sound or white noise or music that does not have lyrics. Because if you're highly focused on something, the idea is this. If you're highly focused on something, you are not going to be listening to the music. So it shouldn't be making a difference. And if it is making a difference, it's because you're not paying attention to the actual thing you're doing. You get my point? Like if you're fully focused on it, the sound would just disappear. And if it doesn't disappear, it's because you're not fully focused. But if you have a lot of struggle with motivation, it can be a good strategy because you at least do it at all. Any other questions? Did everything that I said respond to your question? Like, didn't get clear, or do you still have?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like just as long as you take breaks, like just make sure like your working time is focused, and then you can take breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for the mindless chores, you can multitask as much as you want. Like you can talk to your friend, to your coworker while you're answering emails. Like just like whatever, you just talk and answer emails. That's just mindless work. You're filling forms, like that's mindless. But when you're doing something that's actually highly demanding, like if your job involves, let's say, anything related to like mathematical modeling or things that are actually required to think deeply on something, or do research and read things like a research paper or things that you actually need to understand and process, then that time should be highly focused. Then that should involve deliberate practice. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So here is a question that I want you guys to wonder about. Like, think about this question. Like, what do you want to be great at? So if you could choose any particular field that would be just great at it, like you chose one field that if you just like there's this genie and the genie tells you you have one wish, you can become great at anything you choose to, but like it can be only one single skill, only a single field, and that's it. And imagine you could have that wish granted. Basically, deliberate practice is this genie, and I'm just showing you guys this way that you can actually achieve greatness in that particular field. So if you are serious and committed, I want to be really good at this particular thing, apply deliberate practice. This is a very broad summary with just the skeleton, just the outline of what deliberate practice is. But if you actually want to see more examples, if you want to get a deeper understanding of what it is, you should definitely like read one of the books. That book is a very good one, The Peak, The Secrets of Expertise Performance, I think. That's a very good book. There are many other books on deliberate practice that I could recommend as well. And yeah, but definitely believe in yourself. If you want to be great at something, do it, practice, and you can do it. Also, there's no class next week because of what is Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's the holiday. So Thanksgiving, no class next week, and the memory competition is due today. If you haven't done it yet, please do it and email me take a screenshot of your score and send it to me. Even if you're auditing, I would appreciate if you took it. Okay, everyone is welcome to participate. I would like as many people as possible. If you can ask your mom to take it as well, I would appreciate it. Pretty much anyone, and really anyone is welcome to take the competition. Just email me the performance, and later on I'll give you guys like a ranking with like the top scores in each particular modality. So here we have like 3 modalities. We have 5-minute numbers, 5-minute words, and 5-minute names and faces. You go to this website, you select national standard, you practice one of these 3, like all of these 3. So you're gonna compete in all of them. So we're gonna have a separate ranking for each one of them and a total ranking based on percentiles. And you screenshot the last page and send it on my email. And yeah, so I said it like last week, due today, and sure.
Is it completion based?
It is completion based, so you just need to do it. But I really think after learning a lot about Memory Palace, I think it would be worth it to try it, to actually like try to see like what you can do, like genuinely try to do it. You can do as many times as you want. Just send me your best performance, because my goal is just I want you to try it and have an opportunity to see what you can do given the methods you saw here and so on. Try to use the Memory Palace for all of them. The Memory Palace is going to be like very helpful in all these modalities. So prepare a Memory Palace beforehand. That's going to help you a lot. But yeah, it's just an opportunity for you guys to see like what your memory is capable of. Okay, any questions? Any other questions?
All right, only one for numbers. What is like the best? What do you like? Do you have like a standard for this example?
The best you can do.
5 minutes numbers.
What do you mean? You go to the website and you know,
I already went there, so I was asking like, what numbers, like total numbers, should you like memorize as a standard? Like,
you try to memorize as many as you can.
as many as possible.
Yeah, in under the 5 minutes. So like the ranking is based like then I'm gonna rank. That's true for all of them. So 5-minute numbers means that you have 5 minutes. There's gonna be a ton of numbers, and you try to memorize as many numbers as you can. 5-minute words. There's gonna be a ton of words. You try to memorize as many words as you can. 5 minutes. 5-minute names and faces. You have 5 minutes. You try to memorize as many names and faces as you can.
How many have you done?
I don't remember. It's been many. It's been a long time. A long time. Yeah. For all of them, for numbers, I think I don't remember my best. It's not too high though.
Or yeah, even if it's not your best,
I have no idea. I mean, it's above 100, but I don't remember like how if it's above 200 or below 200. I don't remember, but I don't remember. I don't remember. I do have it like on a spreadsheet. It's not like high for like memory competition actually, like because there are different types of memory competitions. They're like speed based, and they're like the ones that are like amount based. So I broke the record based on amount. So I memorized like a ton of digits and I recited them correctly in a continuous amount of time. When you go for this, you're looking for a speed in a short time frame. So you have a specific time limit, and what matters is the speed, not amount, not as much of amount. But this is like a different thing. And like 200 is not like top performance. That's what I mean. So I never practiced for speed for too long. Like, but I think it was around 200. I think. I don't remember. But yeah. Any other questions? Of course, it's a lot. I know it's a lot of numbers, but like it's not a lot for like actual speed competitions, like worldwide. Okay. Any other questions? So yeah, I know exactly what too high of a number it is to memorize under 5 minutes. So if someone sends me like a very high amount of numbers they memorize, I know it's fake. Like I know that's not gonna happen. So like I can't detect the cheating if someone cheats. So that's why I'm just trusting everyone. But yeah, I think that's all. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good one.